Well, good day, everyone, and welcome live from research vessel Falkor 2 in San Juan, Puerto Rico, United States. My name is Eric King. I'm the Senior Director of Operations here at Schmidt Ocean Institute, and I'm sitting now on board the ship after it just arrived from our inaugural shakedown cruise to the Mid-Atlantic with a team of scientists from around the world where we had an opportunity to really begin testing the various systems and the robotic vehicles on board the ship and seeing some of the fruits of our labor over the past 2 years, where myself spent the better part of 2 years in Spain along with other members of our organization and ship's crew, bringing this new vessel to life and ultimately bringing it to you and the science community around the world. So I'm excited to be able to share a little bit about the vessel with you, and maybe what you've seen on the video already has prompted some questions. But we're very fortunate to have our facilitator and moderator, Allison Miller, here with us. And I'm going to turn over to her to guide us through how this session is going to be set up. Allison?
Thanks so much, Eric, for that warm and sunny welcome from Puerto Rico. As Eric mentioned, I hope you had the chance to watch his tour of research vessel Falkor 2. And just a few logistical announcements before we dive into the questions that you've already submitted ahead of time and will submit during this session. Please enter all of your questions at the bottom of your Zoom screen using the Q&A icon, and we'll get to as many as possible over the next 30 minutes. Closed captioning has been enabled, so you can turn it on or off by using the closed caption icon, also at the bottom of your screen. And as you heard when you joined, this session is being recorded and will be posted on the Schmidt Ocean Institute website within a few weeks so that you can share it with friends and colleagues or revisit any content that you may have missed. While we're waiting for you to enter some questions into the Q&A box, Eric will dive right into some questions that have already been submitted before the session. Our first question is, how are differently abled people able to access the vessel or parts of the vessel?
All right, that's actually a really good question. You know, when we purchased the vessel and we went through the conversion to bring it from an offshore industrial marine a maritime light duty construction vessel for the offshore industry. It already had certain configuration. There are already some limitations to what we could do to the interior and the exterior. But we made a conscious decision that probably one of the best ways that we could support those that might be challenged to go to sea due to certain limitations in their mobility was through telepresence. And we made a tremendous investment in the ship's infrastructure to broadcast live from throughout the vessel to those people that are watching, whether it's scientists or whether it's students or others at home. We've doubled, almost tripled the amount of bandwidth that we're able to support from the ship. We have placed cameras in all the laboratory spaces. We place cameras outside of the ship where various works are going on. And the IT infrastructure that we have created really what we consider to be almost unparalleled, to be able to bring what we're doing alive from this ship to communities all around the world. And we just began to sample that on this last inaugural shakedown cruise, where we're beginning to test some of those systems. So I'd say that what we're actually doing is not just increasing the ability for people to participate on the ship, but to participate from around the world at any corner, as long as they have the internet connection.
Excellent. We look forward to having all of those people join us on YouTube or however they're able to join. We have a question about life on the vessel, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the living situation on board. But our specific question is, does the chef accommodate all dietary restrictions?
Um, well, all's a pretty big word. So and what's defined behind all? Uh, let's just say that our chefs are very accommodating. And so one of the things that we try to do for the science parties, and whether it's um, technologists, engineers, students, artists, multimedia correspondents, others that are coming on for bursts of opportunity, is we communicate with those that are coming before they arrive to the ship, and we discuss with them what their dietary restrictions or limitations might be. And then we broadly share that with our interior department, with our chefs, our head chef and our chef. And so we plan our meals throughout the whole year based on those dietary restrictions. So while I can't say that we do all, we do a lot. And we've been doing that for the past decade. And I think you'd find that the food, the quality of the meals, the way that they're prepared, and trying to accommodate pretty much everyone's needs. And they are evolving over the years, and our chefs have to keep up with the new dietary trends, and some are beyond just trends. They're actually serious limitations. We do try to accommodate everyone.
Excellent. Yes, our chefs work very hard, and all the food is delicious no matter your dietary restrictions. We have some questions about multi-beam mapping, which in the previous session, Jodica mentioned that the expedition did a little bit of to help narrow down where they should search for the vents they were looking for. And so one of the questions is, what is the resolution of the multi-beam on board? And is it full ocean depth? So maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the mapping systems we have on board the vessel.
Yeah, sure. So we were very fortunate to have a vessel this size. I mean, this is a tremendous ship. As you, for those that were in the previous session, this vessel's 110 meters in length. That's 363 feet long, and it allowed us to install a series of multi-beam echo sounders under the vessel in this system called a gondola. It's an appendage that fits underneath the ship, and inside this appendage we have dozens of sonar systems. And what we can do with these sonar systems, as this question was alluding to, is map from just a few meters under the keel of the ship in very shallow water to that full ocean depth. And what we mean by full ocean depth in the ocean sciences world for oceanographic research ships is to 11,000 meters. And so we accomplish that through 3 different systems on board the ship. And right now we're going through a series of trials, tests, to kind of verify how those systems are working. And the deepest water system that we installed is tremendous. It's a very large system that has a very narrow beam width. And what that does is it targets the seafloor in a much more concentrated way, essentially a very fine scale resolution. Not quite as fine scale as you might find on an AUV, which we also use on this latest cruise. So a combination of the embedded systems that we have on board with this full ocean depth mapping capability, which we did not have on our previous vessel, Falkor, and the utilization of autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, that can even do finer scale mapping. We're able to achieve results in pinpoint targeted seafloor characteristics, just as we did on this last cruise. And if those people that are listening in or have an opportunity to listen later, being able to identify hydrothermal vent systems using the combination of the ship's multi-beam systems, AUVs for targeted work, and then sending our ROV down to the seafloor to verify where we believed these vent systems were, is truly a game changer in the ocean scientist community for a ship this size.
Excellent. Sounds like we have some participants that are eager to use that equipment. We have a question about the robotic systems. We all know ROV Sebastian lives on board, but does SOI have plans to add more robotic systems that will live aboard Falkor 2 for scientists to have access to?
I think the short answer is there's lots of great things to come. And although we're not ready today to put another system that we own and operate on board, we're certainly thinking about it. So that's what this year is all about. This year is all about, with us and the scientists that we're collaborating and partnering with, is to test the various features and the specifications that have gone into those features on board this ship with our existing ROV, remotely operated vehicle, Sebastian, but also with other vehicles that we're supporting to bring on board, just as we did on this last cruise, Allison, with the two autonomous underwater vehicles from Monterey Bay Aquarium and Research Institute in the United States. And we're looking to bring on some additional vehicle systems throughout this year to further test. So what this ship offers, and what's also a unique feature on the size of the vessel and this massive aft deck, is it's not just about our equipment. We can partner and we can collaborate with different scientists and communities, and the scientists could also propose to bring on robotic vehicles. We have additional space inside our interior hangars where we can, in the protection of the enclosed environment, launch and recover vehicles. We have a series of large cranes on the aft deck of the ship, where we can also launch and recover different types of vehicles. When this ship was built, in its first 10 years of its life, it supported dozens of equipment that was launched and recovered off the side of the vessel, whether it's inside the interior in the hangar space or outside on the aft deck. So it's not just about what we're bringing and what we're thinking about, what we could add in the future as we continue to work and partner with scientists, but it's also what the science community can bring. And that's something that we're really, and I'm really excited about, is thinking about the possibilities that perhaps weren't quite as available in the past as they are now with a ship this size.
Excellent. And you set me up for the next question so well. And that question is, do you have any tips or, I guess, do you have any tips or word of advice for scientists that want to bring their own equipment or test their own technologies on board Falkor 2? So something that Falkor 2 doesn't currently have, but they want to bring it on board and test it. Do you have any tips for those folks?
Dream big. That's number one, right? And in all
Excellent.
seriousness, but in all seriousness, I think back to how we got started with our first vessel, where we were supporting multiple cruises throughout the Greater Pacific and the Indian Ocean with multiple robotic vehicles, whether they were working in tandem or they were part of a larger program using a coordinated robotics command and control, where we have aerial vehicles, we have surface vehicles and subsurface vehicles. You know, you think about what we can apply to this vessel with a heli deck on the forepart of this ship for autonomous or remotely controlled aerial vehicles for atmospheric or meteorological sampling or communication. We can launch and recover and support vehicles that operate only on the surface of the ship, but also subsea and subsurface, and then all the way down to the seafloor. So whether it's a crawler or it's a lander or perhaps an elevator that's tied into what we're doing with the remotely operated vehicle Sebastian. The uniqueness of the vessel, and I can't emphasize this enough, is this the large over-the-side handling equipment and the large open aft deck to support equipment of various sizes and configurations, but also the network capabilities. So we are essentially plumbed in or piped in to our ship's computing system throughout the entire vessel, whether it's out at the heli deck, whether it's up on our science foremast, whether it's up on the science main mast or on the aft deck of the vessel or inside the hangar in the mission control room, throughout all the laboratories. We can connect a variety of sensors and experiments, different technologies. And I also want to emphasize that inside this ship, in this hangar, again, a very unique feature of the vessel, we can launch and recover equipment that's in the protection of the inside of the vessel. And for years, scientists have been going to sea and trying to work outside. Um, and that'll still happen on this vessel. But if you're in some of those more extreme environments, whether it's heavy weather or harsh weather, or you're in cold climates, being able to have your own small hangar space with your own doors that open up where you can launch and recover vehicles or robotic systems off the side of the ship, I think that will really be helpful to some of the experiments and some of the technologies that the community is looking to test and to apply for ocean sciences.
Exactly. And you just teed up another one of my questions really well. But in our 10-year expedition map that was recently released, some spots on that map point to Antarctica. And I think the community is really excited to conduct some research down there. And we have a question about launching robotic vehicles, but AUVs specifically in sea ice conditions. What are the capabilities of the vessel to handle rough seas and launch and recovery of these robotic systems in areas such as Antarctica? You just alluded to this a little bit with the moon pools, but I'll let you elaborate some more.
So we're new at this, but we studied the different operators that have worked in some of these harsh environments in the past. And navigating and operating in ice is certainly a challenge. I mean, this vessel was designed to operate in the higher latitudes, and that's higher than 60 south latitude and 60 north latitude. And one of the requirements to bring a vessel like ours in this environment, in these areas, is to have it something called polar code compliant. And we're going through that process right now. And that makes sure that the ship is equipped with the proper safety, navigation gear, that the crew are trained to operate in this part of the world. And we're going through that process. And so we certainly expect and anticipate by next year, we will be polar code compliant. So about the specifics of launching and recovering vehicles, if it's not in ice, well, then that's certainly not a problem. It's just a cold environment. We have weather challenges. As I mentioned before, we have some interior capabilities to do that inside the ship's hangar. But the ice is a different story. And there are definitely vessels that can launch and recover and break ice. That's really not the design and the function of this vessel. Although it has that capability to go through some very, very thin ice. At this time, we're probably looking at supporting launch and recovery of autonomous underwater vehicles in the open waters. Now, there might be some icebergs around, certainly, but it would be in the open waters. The moon pools that we have in the ship offer this other unique capability that we were referring to before, Allison, that you had mentioned. And in particular, we have one inside the ship. And that's currently available. We don't have a specific use for it, but it is designed to have the same capabilities and functions and features as what we currently are using for remotely operated vehicle Sebastian to launch and recover over the side. So what is a moon pool? A moon pool is essentially, think of a small swimming pool, but in this case, it's about 5 meters by 5 meters that goes down through the center of the vessel, all the way down to the open sea, where through a series of doors that open, you can now lower things into the sea, and you can recover things from the sea directly from inside the ship in the middle of the vessel. And in this case, we have seen some other operators launch and recover CTD water sampling rosette systems, especially those that are designed specifically for working in the Arctic regions, in the Antarctic regions.
Excellent. I think everyone's excited for us to put those moon pools to good use. Switching gears a little bit, we have a question about the use of low Earth orbiting satellites on board Falkor 2, and if we noticed a difference in our communication capabilities by using them during the last expedition.
So we were an early adopter for low Earth orbiting satellites. in some beta testing that we did when we were working down in Australia. And this is before what we currently have on board the vessel, the Starlink system. And that utilized pairs of satellites that were orbiting the Earth, and that a couple of times a day, when they were passing directly overhead, you could have these large bandwidth packages of data moved up to the satellites or come down from the satellites. And although we found it very useful, it didn't really help us in the communication side, but certainly for large packages of data. Well, that beta test came and went with the bringing on now the Starlink system. And for many of you who probably are aware, or maybe not, the Starlink system now uses what started out as a terrestrial system, so satellite systems for homes and domestic use just a couple of years ago. It now has moved into the marine environment. And we have these two satellite dishes that we've added to the ship, in addition to the traditional, very large 1.5 meter dishes that are broadcasting probably around 12 megabits per second of bandwidth. Now we have a system that can go up to 100 megabits per second of bandwidth. But it's still early in the days. We're an initial adopter. We've tested it in the mid-Atlantic, and in a few years, it's expected to cover the globe, at full coverage, even at the polar regions as well. What that should do is allow simultaneous live streaming of our video feeds, whether it's from on board the ship, whether it's from the seafloor. Maybe we're now able to broadcast things from aerial vehicles that are connected down to the vessel, then from the vessel up to the satellite, but also to move data simultaneously on and off the ship. And that'll be great for the scientists. That's great for ship operations, and also for morale for the scientists and the crew who are on board during their off hours.
Yes, it's nice to stay connected. So that's really exciting, Eric. You mentioned that you were in Puerto Rico and Falkor 2 is at the dock right now. We have a question about, does the new ship make port calls easier or more complicated? And the question is in the spirit of mobilization or demobilization with the science parties. And they also want to know how long you give the scientists to come on board and get ready before you embark on an expedition, and how long they have to get ready to go home, to disembark.
So,
How many days? Yeah.
and actually we're going through this right now. So the timing of
Yeah.
this question is perfect. And so there's a variety of responses to this. Number one, related to the ease of mobilization and port calls. The ease of mobilization, as long as we can get to the dock, we're experiencing it right now. We are able to move gear and equipment from the scientists on and off the ship with ease using this massive crane that we have installed on board the ship that has a dual purpose. We can use the crane for offshore operations for science and research, or we can use it inshore at the dock for mobilization. We're moving 40-foot long shipping containers with scientist gear and equipment from the dock that they may have sent from around the world, with all of their systems and robotic vehicles or instruments or sampling systems that they needed on an expedition. We move that onto the ship. We can strip all of that out of the container, and then we can land it back on the dock, and then the container can wait for us until we come back after however long the expedition is. But the other challenge now, or the primary challenge, is the size of the vessel. So although our new crane system can allow us to mobilize pretty much in any port in the world, the size of the vessel does cause a few restrictions, not just the length, but also the depth. Because of the overall size and width of the ship, it sits a little bit deeper in the water, and we have this gondola that extends over 1 meter below the hull. We need quite a bit of water. We need almost 30 feet of water under the ship for a proper berth. So what we're already finding is that there are a few ports in the world where we're looking to bring this ship this year, where we're going to spend some time at in Anchorage. But that's okay. That's fine. It's just a change of logistics. So there are a few trade-offs, but the crane and the ability to mobilize and move laboratory containers around in different positions on the deck, to move storage containers from the science party on and off the vessel with ease, that's a tremendous benefit that we've been looking for the past decade. Now, how long do scientists have to prepare for the cruise or to demobilize at the end of the expedition? Traditionally, it's 48 hours, but that also will depend on the complexity and the equipment setup. As an example, this past cruise, the scientists actually arrived in advance of 48 hours so they could set up their autonomous vehicles and the laboratory gear and equipment because they had the volume was so great. Uh, but they also had an opportunity when we were sailing underway for about 5 days to the first sampling station to also continue to set up their gear and equipment. Now, on the other end, when we come into port, that's roughly 24 hours. And in this case, the scientists and those that are operating the autonomous vehicles, they had a chance to pack everything up for the most part during their 5 days back into port, so that as soon as we arrived at the dock, we were able to begin offloading and demobilizing their equipment so that they could begin planning to ship their science gear and systems back to their home institution. So the summary is, we'll call it 48 hours before the cruise is scheduled to depart and roughly 24 hours at the end. But it can be flexible depending on the needs of the expedition.
Thanks, Eric. And so I know Falkor 2 is at the dock now, kind of in between scientists have left and we're waiting for the next group to mobilize. Could you tell us what's going on right now?
There's a lot. And so what is a lot? Yes, the demobilization continues. We're not quite done with the science party for a little bit of their final wrap up. And we're bringing on a few bits of science gear and equipment for the next science party. But we're now doing something that we haven't done to the extent that we're doing now. We are advanced mobilizing for 3 expeditions away from today. Because of the size of this open deck space that we have on this ship, we've in the remoteness of some of the places that we're going, such as the Galapagos, many of the science parties that we're collaborating with this year, have requested that they could pre-mobilize much of the supplies and the systems that they need. So that's what we're doing. They've been shipped down here to Puerto Rico, where I'm currently at. We're bringing that gear and equipment on board the ship, setting it aside for them. But that all takes some time and some effort. But we've been in good coordination and communication with the chief scientists, the PIs, the various team leads over the past several months. So this is pre-advanced cruise planning so that we can operate in really remote parts of the world is something also that we're looking forward to trying to take more advantage of in the coming years. But we're also not quite done out of the shipyard yet. So you've heard us talk about shakedown cruises. They really are. You know, ships can stay at a shipyard and keep refining and tweaking and upgrading and refitting and converting for years. But eventually you have to leave. And that's what we did. Eventually we have to leave and we have to get underway and we have to start doing science. We need scientists to come on board. But a few little things aren't quite done yet, and we're working on those now. So we have some contractors and some other engineers and some technicians that are helping us, complete some of those outstanding works that didn't quite get finished over the past couple of years in the shipyard.
Awesome. So it's very busy there, it sounds like. We have a couple questions coming in, and unfortunately, we only have time for one more. But we have a question about the microplastic system that's on board Falkor and what exactly that is and can be used for. So maybe we'll wrap up with that question.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago on Falkor, we did a brief cruise off the east coast of Australia, where we were doing some initial microplastic sampling. We did some surface sampling, and then we're also taking some deep water samples. And what that showed to us, and this is a system that we kind of built ad hoc on the vessel, but what that showed us was, in communication with the science community, that there's a real need now globally to be sampling for microplastics continuously. So when we designed and implemented the new science seawater system suite on board this vessel, we did install a very specific continuous seawater sampling system that is virtually free of plastic interfaces, so that underway or even stationary, scientists can sample or collect and analyze the water that's coming through the system to detect those microplastics. We've just started the system, so we're of course learning how to use and operate what we've designed. But we think that combined with the microplastic systems and the chilled seawater systems and the deionized water systems and the uncontaminated seawater systems and the unfiltered seawater systems and the filtered seawater systems, that all of these combined will really allow the science community that are coming to use the ship kind of this unprecedented suite of waters that they can hopefully utilize with their teams, maybe some co-teams that are coming on board to use the ship simultaneously with them.
Excellent. So many awesome opportunities to analyze seawater. Well, I wanted to thank you so much for your time, Eric, answering all of these questions. Unfortunately, we didn't get to them all, but Eric will be back later today to continue answering your questions, and we'll make sure that he can address some of the ones we didn't get to today. Please check the symposium website for the times of the sessions this afternoon, and tomorrow we'll be hosting 3 new Waypoint sessions about how you can propose ship time if you're a scientist, a technologist, an artist, or looking for a berth of opportunity. And we'll also be discussing the Ship to Shore program. So please join us later today or tomorrow. And with that, I'll give it back to Eric for our final words about research vessel Falkor 2.
Well, I think that the final words are that, as I mentioned before, dream big, think big. We've really added and tried to think through ourselves all the various capabilities that the science community would need for doing deep sea exploration, discovery, whether it's subsea, surface, or atmospheric. And we hope to, over the coming weeks, months, years, grow in and mature into this vessel along with the science community. So I look forward very much to the continued participation and partnering and collaborating to just keep this vessel state of the art, and a vessel that's really here for scientists and the community that the science supports. Thank you.